Oh, it's not time to make a change. Just relax and take it.
You are sitting in traffic, standing in the kitchen, or doing something completely ordinary when a song comes on. And before you can stop it, your throat tightens and your eyes sting, and you have to look away from whoever is next to you because you are not about to explain why a rock song just broke you in half. Every man has one. That track that gets past whatever wall he built. The one he skips in public and plays alone in the car with the windows up. These are 10 rock songs that made grown men cry, and still do. Number 10, Dust in the Wind, Kansas, 1977.
Only for a moment, and the moment's gone. Oh.
Kerry Livgren was sitting on his couch, teaching himself a new finger-picking pattern on acoustic guitar. His wife, Vici, kept walking by and telling him it sounded like a real song. He did not agree. To him, it was just a warm-up, a way to loosen his hands before getting to actual Kansas material, which at the time meant layered progressive rock with big arrangements and long instrumental passages.
My dreams pass before my eyes.
A quiet acoustic piece about mortality was nowhere in the plan. He wrote the lyrics after reading a book of Native American poetry that kept returning to the same idea. Everything ends. People, ambition, fame. Livgren was sure his bandmates would reject it. It was not a Kansas song, but when he finally played it for them on the last day of rehearsal, there was a stunned silence.
Curiosity, dust in the wind.
Then they asked him where it had been hiding. They recorded it with a simple string arrangement, and Livgren's fingerpicking carried the whole thing. It climbed to number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became the biggest single Kansas ever had, which nobody saw coming. A prog rock band known for Carry On Wayward Son, a track built on power and drama, hit their commercial peak with something you could play on one guitar in a quiet room. Livgren has said he still hears from men who tell him the song found them at the exact wrong moment. A funeral, a hospital waiting room, 3 in the morning when everything gets too quiet. It was never meant to be that song for anybody, but it turned into the one that shows up right when life reminds you it has an expiration date. Number 9, Knockin' on Heaven's Door, Bob Dylan, 1973. Bob Dylan wrote this for a Western. Sam Peckinpah was directing Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, a dusty, violent film about 2 old friends on opposite sides of the law, and he asked Dylan to handle the soundtrack. Most of what Dylan turned in was instrumental or atmospheric, but for one scene, where a wounded sheriff stumbles to the edge of a river and his wife watches him go, Dylan wrote something that had no business being as devastating as it turned out to be. The song uses 3 chords, maybe 4, depending on how you count it. The lyrics barely fill a page. There is a man asking for his guns to be taken away because he cannot use them anymore, and he feels the sky getting dark above him. That is it. No big story, no clever turn, no resolution. Just a man at the end of something saying so out loud. Dylan recorded it with a small group at Burbank Studios. The session was loose, almost sloppy, and nobody treated it like they were making history. It reached number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100, which for a movie soundtrack song in 1973 was solid but not earth-shattering. What happened after is what matters. The song got covered so many times that it stopped being just a Dylan track. Guns N' Roses turned it into an arena anthem. Reggae artists slowed it down. Church groups sang it at funerals. Each version landed differently, but the gut punch was always in the same place. That image of a man standing at a door he knows he has to walk through. Not ready, not willing, just aware. Dylan never performs it the same way twice. Some nights he barely whispers it. On other nights he sounds angry about it. But no matter what he does with it, the room always goes quiet at the same point. When the knocking starts, people stop pretending they are fine. Number 8, Heroes, David Bowie, 1977.
Didn't know what time it was when the lights were low. I leaned back.
David Bowie and Tony Visconti were at Hansa Studios in West Berlin, a recording facility so close to the Berlin Wall that you could see the guard towers from the control room windows. Bowie had moved to Berlin partly to escape the chaos of his Los Angeles years, and partly because the city fascinated him. It was split into two, tense, strange, and full of people living ordinary lives inside an extraordinary situation. One afternoon, Bowie looked out the studio window and saw his producer Visconti and a woman named Antonia Maas meeting at the wall. They would come to the same spot and hold each other, right there in view of the armed guards. Visconti was married to someone else at the time, and Bowie kept the real story quiet for decades, telling interviewers only that he had seen an anonymous couple. That image planted itself in the song. Bowie wrote the lyrics in the studio, most of them in a single afternoon. The story is simple. Two people who know their world is broken, who know the odds are against them, deciding to be together anyway. Not forever, just for one day. The trick is that the song never promises it will last. It just insists that for this one moment it matters. Visconti devised a recording technique using 3 microphones placed at increasing distances across the studio to capture Bowie's vocals. As the song builds and Bowie sings louder, the farther microphones were triggered open, which is why the sound seems to physically expand around you. Meanwhile, Robert Fripp's guitar was recorded using a completely different method. Fripp marked spots on the studio floor with tape, each one tuned to a different feedback tone, and moved between them while his guitar ran through Brian Eno's synthesizer. The result is that layered, soaring wall of sound that lifts the song into something enormous. Heroes reached number 24 on the UK singles chart when it first came out. Not a smash, but the song never needed chart success to do what it does. It became the soundtrack to the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, played at memorial concerts and sung by thousands in the streets. When Bowie passed away in 2016, it was the song people reached for first. A love song set in the shadow of a wall that no longer exists, and somehow it hits harder now than it did when the wall was still standing. Number 7, Father and Son, Cat Stevens, 1970.
Oh, it's not time to make a change. Just relax and take it.
Cat Stevens originally wrote this for a musical called Revolution that never got made. The idea was a story set during the Russian Revolution, about a family in the farmland where the father wants to keep things as they are, and the son is inspired to join the fight. The musical fell apart, but the song stayed with him because the feeling behind it was too real to throw away. A father trying to hold on, a son trying to leave, both of them right, neither one winning. What makes it work is the way Stevens performs both sides himself.
Easy, you're still young, that's your fault. There's so much you...
He sings the father's part low, calm, careful, full of things he wants to say but cannot quite get out. Then the son's voice comes in higher, faster, almost tripping over itself to get free. You do not need someone to explain the song to you. You can feel the argument in the way the voices push against each other. Stevens recorded it for the album Tea for the Tillerman at Morgan Studios in London, with additional sessions at Olympic and Island Studios. The production is spare, acoustic guitar, a little bass, barely any drums. There is nothing in the arrangement that is trying to make you feel anything. The voices do all of it. It was never released as a single in the United States.
Have to know, find a girl, and settle down.
Which means it never had a Billboard chart run there. In the United Kingdom, it served as the B-side to Moonshadow and helped the song reach audiences, but it found most of its life through album sales and radio airplay that just never stopped. Tea for the Tillerman became one of the best-selling albums of the early 70s. The reason this one still gets to men in their 50s and 60s is not complicated. At 20, you hear the son and think he is right. At 60, you hear the father and realize he knew what was coming. And somewhere in the middle of your life, you hear both at the same time and the whole song becomes unbearable in the best possible way. You do not cry because it is sad. You cry because every word of it happened to you on one side or the other, and probably both. Number 6, Black, Pearl Jam, 1991. Eddie Vedder first heard what would become Black as a raw instrumental demo called E-Ballad, written by guitarist Stone Gossard. The demo was on a cassette tape that former Red Hot Chili Peppers drummer Jack Irons had passed along. Vedder was working at a gas station in San Diego at the time. He recorded vocals for 3 other songs and mailed them back to Seattle, then wrote lyrics for E-Ballad on his way to audition for the band. The words came from somewhere he could not fully explain afterward. He has said it is about a relationship that ended, someone he loved who left, but he has never been more specific than that. The song was never released as a single. The band refused. Epic Records pushed hard for it, knowing it could be a massive radio hit, but Vedder and the rest of the group did not want it turned into something commercial. They thought releasing it as a single would cheapen it, so it never got an official music video or a promotional campaign. Yet still became one of the most requested songs on rock radio throughout the 90s without any of that machinery behind it. What gets people is the ending. The first half of the song is controlled, Vedder holding himself together as he sings about sheets of empty canvas and faded photographs. Then, somewhere past the 3-minute mark, he starts to unravel. The band builds underneath him and his voice begins cracking and pushing against the melody like he is trying to hold a door shut that keeps blowing open. By the time he reaches the final line, he is barely singing anymore. He is just letting it happen. Live performances made it worse, or better, depending on how you look at it. Vedder would change the final lyrics, improvise new lines, sometimes trail off into something that sounded less like a concert and more like a man forgetting there was an audience. Fans who saw those early 90s shows still talk about them as if they witnessed something they were not supposed to see. No single, no video, no push, just a song that refused to stay quiet. That was number 6. The top 5 are next, and trust me, they hit different. Subscribe so you do not miss a single one. Number 5. Who Wants to Live Forever? Queen, 1986.
There's no time for us.
Brian May wrote this one in a single sitting after watching a rough cut of the film Highlander. The movie tells the story of an immortal man who must watch everyone he loves grow old and die while he remains the same. There is a scene where the main character holds his wife as she ages in his arms, and May could not get it out of his head. He went home that night, and the song came out almost fully formed. Freddie Mercury sang it like he already understood that time was running out.
There's no place for us.
The vocal climbs slowly through the verses, restrained at first, almost fragile, and then the orchestra swells around him and he opens up into something enormous. Michael Kamen arranged and conducted the orchestral parts with the National Philharmonic Orchestra, and the contrast between the quiet opening and that massive final section makes the song feel like watching someone accept something they have been fighting against their whole life.
What is this thing that fills?
It was released as a single and reached number 24 on the UK chart. Not a huge commercial moment, but after Mercury passed away in 1991, the song changed. People who had shouted along to it in movie theaters a few years earlier were now standing at tribute concerts trying to hold it together. Every line hit a nerve it had not hit before, because the question at the center of the song was no longer hypothetical. May has talked about performing it live after Mercury was gone, how the crowd would go completely still, how you could feel the whole room holding the same thought at the same time. It is not a sad song on paper. It asks a question: who wants to live forever? But the answer sitting in that silence is what breaks people. Nobody does, and everybody wishes they could. Number 4, Wish You Were Here. Pink Floyd made one of the most successful albums in history with The Dark Side of the Moon. They were rich, famous, touring the world, and miserable. Roger Waters and David Gilmour both felt disconnected from the music industry, from their audience, and from each other, but underneath all of that was something more specific. Their original frontman, Syd Barrett, was gone. Barrett had co-founded the band and been its creative engine in the early days. Then his mental health unraveled, and by the late 60s, he could no longer function in the group. They replaced him and moved on, but the guilt of it never fully went away.
From a cold steel rail.
Wish You Were Here was Waters writing directly to Barrett, or maybe to himself, or maybe to anyone who had ever felt like the person standing next to them was already somewhere else. The recording session at Abbey Road Studios produced one of those strange moments that rock history likes to save for the worst possible timing. Unannounced during the sessions for this album, he had shaved his head and eyebrows and gained weight, and the band barely recognized him. Gilmour later said it took him a long time to realize who was standing there. They played him the mix of Shine on You Crazy Diamond, a song written about him, and Barrett did not realize it was about him. The song itself is built on one of the simplest acoustic progressions Gilmour ever played. Two guitars trading the same phrase back and forth like two people trying to finish a conversation, neither knowing how to start. It became one of the most played album tracks in FM radio history. Men do not cry at this one because it is sad. They cry because they have someone in mind when they hear it, and that person is not coming back. Number 3, Purple Rain, Prince, 1984. Prince did not write Purple Rain at a desk. He built it on stage. The version most people know from the album was recorded live at First Avenue, a club in Minneapolis, on August 3rd, 1983. The band, The Revolution, had been rehearsing the song in a warehouse for hours, working it out from a rough outline until the arrangement locked into place. Wendy Melvin, who was making her live debut with the band that night at just 19 years old, later said she had no idea what was happening while they were playing it. She just followed the sound, hoping she was keeping up. What came out that night was not a pop song, it was closer to a sermon. The guitar solo alone lasts nearly half the track, and Prince plays it like he is trying to say something his voice already gave up trying to explain. The song hit number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, and the album it anchored became one of the best-selling records in history. The film of the same name won an Academy Award for Best Original Score. But none of that is why it makes people cry. It is the guitar. Somewhere around the 5-minute mark, Prince stops singing and lets the instrument take over, and what comes out is the sound of someone who has run out of words. Every note bends and stretches and holds on longer than it should. Audiences at his concerts would stand completely still during that section. Thousands of people just watching one man disappear into his own music. He played it at the Super Bowl in 2007 in the pouring rain. Even the weather cooperated. Some moments do not need explanation. They just need you to be there. Number 2, The Living Years, Mike and the Mechanics, 1988. Every generation. Mike Rutherford's father had died not long before this song was written. The two of them never really talked about what mattered, which is a thing that happens in a lot of families where everyone is too polite to start that kind of conversation. Rutherford knew he had waited too long. B.A. Robertson was dealing with the same loss and the opposite situation at once. His own father had died around the same time, and his son had been born just months apart from that death. He was suddenly terrified of repeating the same silence with his own child. Robertson wrote the lyrics. Rutherford wrote the music. That collision made the song hit from two directions at once. It is a song about a son who waited too long and a new father who does not want to make the same mistake. Paul Carrack sang the vocal with the kind of controlled ache that sounds like a man reading a letter he never got to send. Carrack had his own connection to the material. His father had died in an accident when Carrack was just 11 years old. Come beating on your door. It reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in March of 1989, but the chart position is not what men remember about it. What they remember is the line about not being there that morning. Fathers hear it and think of their own fathers. Sons hear it and pick up the phone. Sometimes the same man does both in the same sitting. Number 1, Hurt, Johnny Cash, 2002.
To see if I still feel.
Johnny Cash did not write Hurt. Trent Reznor wrote it for 9 Inch Nails in 1994 as a song about numbness and falling apart. It was dark, industrial, and aimed at an audience decades younger than Cash is. Nobody expected a 70-year-old country singer to go anywhere near it. Then Rick Rubin handed Cash the song during the sessions for his American recording series. Cash sat down with an acoustic guitar and sang it once, and what came out was something Reznor himself said he could no longer claim. The song was no longer about youth and recklessness. It was about a man looking back at an entire life and not flinching at what he saw. The music video, directed by Mark Romanek, was filmed at Cash's old estate and the abandoned House of Cash Museum in Tennessee. His hands shaking, old photographs on the walls, a table covered in food that nobody is eating. Cash looks directly into the camera and does not pretend to be anything other than what he is, a man near the end telling the truth. Cash passed away just months after the video was released. Reznor later said that hearing Cash's version made him feel like he had lost ownership of the song entirely, and that it was the greatest honor of his career. Some songs make you cry because the words are sad. This one makes you cry because the man singing it knew exactly where he was standing, and he sang it anyway. Those are 10 rock songs that made grown men cry, and still do. If we missed one, tell us in the comments. And if this is your first time here, hit subscribe so you do not miss the next one.